how did Branch Rickey orchestrate the breaking of the color barrier?
In baseball, okay.
In baseball.
So Branch Rickey, I believe, was from Ohio, and he played college baseball. I want to say Oberlin College, because Oberlin was very progressive and integrated, even in the 1800s, blacks and whites at the same college, and he had a black teammate on his baseball team. So this was something that he clearly saw from an early age as a possibility. And actually it was a possibility. Again, remember, there were black players in major leagues in the 1800s until the color barrier was established. Basically what he did was, by the time he was the GM for the Brooklyn Dodgers in the 1940s, because there was an unspoken agreement in Major League Baseball that people of color would not be able to play. And it was such a pussy-footed lack of even having the courage of their own convictions. Now, I don't want to call it courage, but stop bullshitting around, okay? Are you excluding black folks or are you not? And they were. Half of the teams clearly, well, fairly clearly, I think, would have been up for the possibility if it was something that was generally open, like, okay, guys, let's do this. You know, we know there are obviously good enough players in the Negro Leagues to do this, but you have half the league that clearly no way, no how. And the commissioner, Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, really went out of his way at meetings among the owners to bullshit around the issues, so that there could literally be like minutes, official minutes, where they even brought people like the black actor and professional football player Paul Robeson in to speak on behalf of the possibility of black players in the major leagues, so they can say, okay, yeah, we gave you every opportunity to be an advocate for it. In other words, we're open, right? We're not exclusive. And we'll say on the official minutes, any team can do what they want. Okay, so the official transcript says anyone can do what they want, but everyone knows, yeah, not happening. Branch Rickey is the only person in those minutes of said meetings that are like, excuse me, Mr. Commissioner, am I to believe that basically this has been properly addressed and that there's actually a formal decision on this? And of course the answers are always BS. So Branch Rickey, what he did was kind of brilliant. He was also a part owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers. They created a black baseball team for essentially what was the Negro Leagues, called the Brooklyn Brown Dodgers.
Oh, wow.
And back then you had a lot of teams, even in the Negro Leagues, that called themselves the Black Giants, stuff like that, you know. So what it ostensibly was the Brooklyn Dodgers organization simply making an entrepreneurial venture into the market of black baseball as a business venture. So we have a black team playing black teams in the black leagues, but what that team really was a covert farm system for the Dodgers to covertly, just like any farm system today in the minor leagues, cultivate players to get into the major leagues. And so this was like a multi-year process where he sent the scouts out in-house in Brooklyn Dodger house, go out and find a handful of black players that we think can be groomed to break the color barrier. And I think I was erroneous in our last IGTV when I said he intended to bring 3 up all at once. I think it was more like 5, but for whatever reasons he couldn't wait on the other 4, and he pushed Jackie through. But those are things he did covertly, again, and this is what people have to understand. And I know it's difficult when you've been severely excluded from the free processes, frankly, of free civilization that white people have access to. It's difficult, I understand, to have the empathy to realize you have millions of white allies. And to the white allies, it doesn't mean self-loathing. Okay? Benjamin Franklin and Quakers 200 years ago, okay, were lobbying Congress to end slavery. You have people who have been allies from the beginning. And so someone like Branch Rickey, to whatever scope of importance that baseball has, okay, is someone in private enterprise, okay, baseball, is doing what he can to integrate and expand the imagination of the public for a freer society. And there are transcripts from speeches he's given at black colleges in the 1940s explaining his goals, that why should black folks not be able to put food on their table, clothe their children, based on the quality of their work, regardless of skin color. So again, those are some of the things that he did, and these are things that were published in the papers. The Brooklyn Dodgers manager several years before was the one that actually was sort of a whistleblower, Leo DeRocher, that told the press, oh no, there's an agreement in baseball to exclude these guys, and it's ridiculous. So America has a long tradition of expanding freedom. It's too bad, I mean, it's abhorrent that we often had to start at a place of such discrimination. But America definitely has a tradition, as opposed to most other countries, of fighting, despite its worst elements, for more freedom. And I pray that people of color out there know, and that white people who are oblivious out there know, that you have had allies the entire time. Let's do something about that.
How do you feel about the upcoming baseball season?
If they can pull it off. Look, there have been major tragedies during this whole pandemic. Okay? God bless. Purely from a baseball enthusiast standpoint, this is pretty far out. Baseball has such a storied and rich tradition, more than most of the other sports. Major League Baseball is the oldest professional sports league of its kind in the world. Okay? The notion that we're squeezing in 60 games out of what is usually a 162 game season is bonkers. And so I'm really excited to see what happens. This is literally a season where you could lose the pennant in the first 10 games of the season. And what I'm really curious about is, will there be official batting champions in the American and National League?
Oh, that's a good
rule
question.
is, I believe it's, you need 450 at-bats to qualify for the batting title, and no one is going to remotely come close to that. So unlike, whoever hit the most amount of home runs, right? Whoever hit the most amount of home runs is it. There's no rule you have to have an amount of at-bats. But to be the official batting champion, you must have an official number of at-bats, and no one's going to have those at-bats. So are they going to determine and crown whoever ends up having the highest batting average as the batting champion? Or will there be no batting champion? Because baseball, I think rightly, has been averse to assigning asterisks.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I was thinking. They'll probably put that on a baseball card. Like, if it's showing the yearly stats of someone, it'll have an asterisk on 2020.
Baseball doesn't do that.
Oh.
Baseball doesn't do that. So, for instance, Cal Ripken Jr., who has the record for the most amount of consecutive games, 2,600, I forget if it's 62 or 26, beating out the great Lou Gehrig, who only had to quit because he was dying. There were seasons Cal Ripken did that in strike-shortened seasons. And so he played every game, and he led the league in games played, and on the back of the baseball card, they'll maybe have something in italics to show that he led the league. And if you didn't understand that in 1981 or in 1994 there was a work stoppage, you'll look and be like, oh, he played 100 games and that led the league. So they don't do asterisks. But will there be an official batting champion? And what is the rule? What if you went 2 for 5 on the season, your whole season, and so you hit 400?
Yeah.
There has to be a threshold, a certain statistical threshold to qualify. And what do you do in a season that is missing 100 games in it? So I think it's going to be exciting if they pull it off. So let's see.
You know who would have the perfect answer?
Tony Spota.
Tony Spota. Yeah. All right, next question. It's a doozy. Tell me something about the Mets. It's not really a question.
Okay, so the Mets, and we're from Queens. So the Mets, as we all know, replaced the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Giants of Washington Heights when both teams moved to California in 1958. What a lot of New Yorkers don't know is that they're called the Mets, as in the Metropolitans, because the New York Metropolitans predated the New York Giants, the Brooklyn Dodgers, and the New York Yankees as the first Major League Baseball team in New York City in the in 1880, and they were the first team to play in the Polo Grounds, and then they actually ended up playing on Staten Island, and it was like half a decade later, maybe a little less, that the Troy Trojans. Troy is a city or a town in central eastern New York State, and they ended up moving to Manhattan as the New York Gothams, which became the New York Giants. And the Brooklyn Dodgers are so old also during all this time. They're the Brooklyn Dodgers and not the New York Dodgers, because Brooklyn at the time was its own city, just like Queens, and they didn't become part of New York City until 1898. So you had a team from one city, the Brooklyn Dodgers, playing a team from another city, the New York Giants or the New York Metropolitans. And so, so the Metropolitans were the first Major League Ball club in New York, and the Yankees are the Johnny-come-latelys. The Yankees during that time were the Baltimore Orioles, and it wasn't until 1903 that the Baltimore Orioles moved to Manhattan and became the New York Highlanders, and in 1911 they became the New York Yankees, and in 1923 they moved to the Bronx. I realized that was just as much the history of the Dodgers, Giants, and the Yankees as much as the Mets, but that's something about the Mets.
And that's why their colors are blue and orange.
Their colors are blue and orange because those were the colors of the Giants and the Dodgers. And it's the color of the flag of New York City.